learn about the stormwater control measures and maintenance responsibilities associated with them. Before I get going, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Josh Hayes. Over the section here in Metro Water Services Stormwater that oversees the compliance program that requires property owners to maintain stormwater control measures. And we put this together to try to outreach to property management companies or HOAs or other owners. Before we get going on the presentation, I wanted to make a couple quick announcements. This presentation is going to be recorded. So if you have other personnel in your companies or your HOA that you'd like to share it with, eventually we will have a link that we can send out. Just follow up with us on that and we'll get that to you after the presentation. And then secondly, everybody attending the presentation will be muted with the exception of the presenters so that we can have a clean audio. There will be an opportunity for you guys to submit questions that you may have via email afterwards. But the presentation itself will be about a little over an hour long, and we're going to go through a lot of material. This is just going to be an overview. There's a lot of information that we could provide. We have hours of presentations. So we're trying to give you an overview today, and we know that there may be questions afterwards. And people are probably still logging on, but I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we can get through the presentation. So the things that we're going to cover today, I'm going to start off by going over what are SCMs, why do we have them, why are they regulated, and why is it so important that property owners maintain them. And then I'm going to turn it over to Liz Steinstraw, who's one of our inspectors. And she's going to talk about the different types of SCMs that we have in the county, because with stormwater, it's not one size fits all. There's a lot of different types of stormwater treatment that can go into a site. So it's good to kind of understand the differences in the stormwater treatment. She's going to go over what they are, the main ones that are used, and how they function. And then she's going to turn it over to Jessica Bell, who is another inspector with our program. And she's going to just give a brief overview of our inspection program and how we coordinate with sites, how we go out to sites, what we're looking for in our inspections, and then how we follow up with property owners to try to achieve compliance in getting structures to be maintained. And then after that, she's going to turn it over to Rob Tupowski and Matthew Lockhart in our group, two other inspectors. And they're going to go through kind of in detail some of the main structures that we have looked at and the issues, the common maintenance issues and inspection issues that you need to look for those structures. This is really going to be the kind of the heart of the presentation for your folks that are out there on the ground that are looking at these structures, seeing if they need to do maintenance. And then they're going to turn it over to Howard Jackson, who's with our group that's over the annual inspection and reporting responsibilities of property owners. He receives those annual reports and processes them. He's going to cover a new form that we're working on, go over some of the things that we really would like to see in that form, all the information. And he's also going to show you a brief introduction to our Metro Parcel Viewer program, which will be very helpful for property owners to see what types of SCMs they have on their sites and what, more importantly, what grading permit numbers they're associated with, because we need that information on the annual reporting form. And then Howard's going to turn it over to Julie Berbiglia, who's a public education specialist with our group. And she's going to talk about some fun stuff that we're working on, some educational materials that we're trying to reach out to the public. We realize as a stormwater program that we need to do more outreach because owners just do not know what these stormwater control measures are. And we're trying to expand that over the next few years. There's going to be a lot more materials that are available on our website, social media, and even through mail outs. So she's going to briefly talk about some of the upcoming educational materials. And then at the end, I'll have all of our contact information, all of our inspectors, Howard's contact information on the annual report. And then I'll explain how you guys can submit questions to us. And then we'll how we will respond to that via email. So to start off, what are SCMs? I think a lot of people know what they are and what they're for, but just to recap, if you have an undeveloped property with a lot of vegetation, trees and grass, and when it rains, that vegetation acts as a sponge and a filter. So when you're developing a property and you remove all that vegetation and you put up parking lots, buildings, roadways, that sponge and that filter has been removed. So when it rains, all the pollution, all the contaminants that are on that parking lot, the roadways, that all washes downstream without a filter, and none of it is being absorbed into the ground. So you're going to end up with higher creek levels, downstream flooding, and the water that's in the creeks is going to be a lot more polluted. So what we require when sites develop in Davidson County, we require them to put in structures that intercept that water that's coming off those dirty parking lots and act as that filter and that sponge that was removed when the development removed that vegetation. So what we're trying to do is the same end result, have clean water and reduce flooding downstream. So when these structures that are put into place by the development are not maintained, then basically you have the polluted water and the elevation, no treatment going on whatsoever. So what we're trying to do is make sure they're being maintained so that we get the maximum treatment that we can so that we have clean water and no flooding downstream. It's important to note that the sites that you guys represent or you may own, they would never be allowed to develop without these structures. The only reason they're allowed to get a grading permit was to put these structures in place and to sign an agreement that makes sure they're going to be maintained by the property owner and all future property owners. So real quickly, brief history of our regulations. Our first stormwater management program really started in the late 70s, and it was all focused on flooding. So it was really focused on large developments. We made them put in large detention ponds, really to prevent downstream flooding. So what we ended up with is large ponds with large pipes that discharge from them. So we slowed down the water a little bit, but still a lot of the pollutants were going through the outlets. In the late 90s, with the new permits handed down through the EPA with the MS4 permits, we had to expand our program and also treat post-construction runoff with water quality. So basically, the outlet structures on these ponds became a lot smaller. We had to hold back the water a lot longer. We had to settle out the pollutants into the basins so that they weren't discharging through the pipes. And when we changed our regulations in the early 2000s, our grading permits were required for every site that disturbed over a quarter of an acre. So if you were getting a grading permit, you had to put these permanent post-construction controls in, and what we call SCM, stormwater control measures. So in the early 2000s, it took off. There's hundreds of them being installed across the county as the developments went in. And each one of these had maintenance agreements that were recorded with the property deed. And it made the property owner and all future property owners responsible for the maintenance of those structures. In mid-2007, all the maintenance agreements, our regulations changed. They were made stronger. We had stronger language put into our maintenance agreements. And basically, that's when the inspection and maintenance annual reports were required with the maintenance agreements, so the property owner would have to submit the annual report to Metro Water Services. Currently, we have over 6,000 structures in the county and in all the various watersheds where all the development is occurring. With the development here in Nashville, we're at about 30 to 40 a month to our system that we, basically when projects get signed off after the construction phase, they come into our system, and then it starts the process of us going out to the sites, making sure the property owners are maintaining the structures. So with that said, with the sheer number of structures that we have in our program, we realized we needed to expand our program so that we can reach out to all these property owners. So we really started expanding our program in 2016 so that we can focus on doing our own inspections, but also to work with property owners to submit their annual reports. So that's a brief overview. Now I'm going to turn it over to Liz Steinstraw. She's going to give you just a little information on the different types of structures that we have.
Hi everyone, so I'm going to talk to you all about the different types of SCMs that we have. Within our county, we have about 6 that we consider the big 6, and those are going to be the dry detention ponds, proprietary devices, wet ponds, bioretentions, permeable pavement, and water quality swells. The first is going to be the dry detention pond. These ponds have been the most prominent within our county. These structures are temporarily storing stormwater for up to 72 hours and slowly release the stormwater runoff into an outfall. The detention of the stormwater runoff allows sediment, nutrients, heavy metals, and other pollutants such as trash and debris to settle out into the pond before entering our larger storm system. These SCMs also assist in preventing roadway and downstream flooding. Here are a few examples of what those structures would look like out in the field. The next type of SCMs are proprietary devices. These structures are located underground and filter pollutants out of stormwater before releasing the treated water into the larger storm system. These structures have limited pollutant storage and require specialized maintenance and inspection when the time comes for maintenance. A few of those structures may look like this. Some have the baskets and some have filters. One of the newer members of the Big 6 are the bioretentions, or more commonly known as rain gardens. A bioretention is an engineered basin that is filled with specialized soil mix and native plants. When stormwater enters the basin, several processes begin to take place. Retention of stormwater to aid in prevention of downstream flooding, infiltration through the engineered sandy soils, evapotranspiration of water from the vegetation root systems uptake water, and in some cases, pollutants as nutrients for survival. These structures are to drain 24 hours after a rain event and must maintain a 75% vegetation canopy coverage. If a rain event is greater than the basin can handle, then the system can use its spillway or underdrain system in order to output into the larger storm system. Here are a few examples of those bioretentions that are within the county. The 2 on the right are examples of urban bioretentions, and they are typically found in our downtown area. The one on the left top is going to be a wet weather bioretention. That's a picture of it during a wet weather inspection. And then the one on the bottom right is a rockline bioretention, which is also found within our county. Another SCM type is a wet retention pond. Wet retention ponds can consist of a combination of permanent deep pool water and shallow marsh. These ponds allow pollutants to settle out of the water, encourage natural microbial activity that cleanses water, and reduces the overall amount of rain runoff. Sediment, trash, nutrients, metals, and pollutants settle out of the retention pond, or settle out into the retention pond, excuse me. Rainwater runoff remains in the wet retention pond for days to weeks while the pollutants settle out. Rain from a small storm usually stay in the pond. Larger amounts may flow out of the pond through the overflow structure. When the pond is to capacity, water overflows to the downstream storm system. Some wet pond retentions will have an aerating fountain to aid in mosquito and algae growth deterrents and provide oxygen for aquatic species, but not all have those features. Here are a few examples of those wet retention ponds within our county. The top left is typically going to be found in residential, kind of tucked away in the back mostly. But then some are more commercialized and have fountains as the top right and bottom left. The next of the big 6 are going to be grass swells. These structures are enhanced stormwater ditches. The stormwater swells allow for moderate infiltration, stormwater reduction, infiltration of some of the pollutants and heavy metals and debris. Grassy swells have flat bottoms and taller grass that helps runoff spread out and slow down. Sediment and other pollutants are filtered out as the water soaks into the ground. Some of those examples within our county are shown here. They are easily missed. As you can see, they just look like grass depressions. So these are kind of ones that you need to pay attention to and refer back to your plans to make sure that you don't miss these on your sites. The last of the big six are going to be permeable pavement. These pavements have layers of various sized gravel and soil that filter pollutants out of the stormwater runoff. During a rain event, stormwater soaks through the permeable pavement into the soil. Car oil, sediment, and other parking lot pollutants are filtered out of the stormwater by the subsurface soils. Here are several examples of permeable pavement. The two on the left are examples of permeable pavers. These pavers typically sit on top of engineered soil with an underdrain. The pavers are spaced with small gravel in between to allow stormwater infiltration and to filter out pollutants. The two on the right are examples of permeable asphalt. These structures may or may not have underdrains. The asphalt is engineered with void space to allow for stormwater infiltration and filtration of pollutants. And next, Jessica Bell will be speaking to you all about the Metro inspection process. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica. I'm going to talk about the SCM inspection process. So in 2016, NPDS began expanding dedicated resources to the SCM maintenance oversight program, focusing Metro staff on performing SCM inspections. So we started by dividing the county into 3 sections for each inspector. We have an inspector for the east and west sides of the county, as well as a downtown inspector. We then divided the county into half-mile grids, and we select a grid at random and inspect the SCMs within that grid. So each asterisk that you see is an SCM color-coded by type. The green are bioretentions, red are water quality units, yellow is dry ponds. So what do we bring with us to an SCM inspection? If they're available, we bring original plans or drawings, aerial maps, an inspection form or something for taking notes, a camera, and tools. So if you have a water quality unit on your site, you'll want something to open that manhole lid. All right, so during our inspections, we use the plans as a guideline for how an SCM should look and function. If they're available, this is what we have on hand for every inspection. Something we look for in a set of plans is an SCM detail. This could tell you the specifics about the SCM. For example, the detail on the left shows a section view of a bioretention. It can tell us the level of the mulch layer, how deep it should be, as well as the media layer under the mulch. It could tell us if there's a underdrain or how high the overflow structure should be. The top right is a detail of a dry pond outlet structure. I can see that there should be an 8-inch orifice as well as a perforated pipe. So that's what I'm going to be looking for in my inspection. And the bottom right is a detail of a water quality unit. These will sometimes tell you how much sediment it can hold before it bypasses. Another thing, if you have a bioretention on your property, something useful to have is the original landscaping plan. This could tell you what types of plants were originally installed and how many of each plant. We use the landscaping plan to determine if the amount of vegetation in a bioretention we see during an inspection is acceptable or not. So when the inspection is complete, if the SCMs are in good condition and functioning, no notice will be sent to the property owner. But we'll try to speak with someone on site if minor issues are noted. And if the SCMs have issues that could impact function, an inspection notice will be sent describing what needs to be addressed. So here's an example of a notice of inspection that some of you have perhaps received in the past from us. We include a page where we write out the issues we saw during our inspection. And we also include pictures, an aerial map, as well as the original plans or drawings if they're available. And lastly, we include in our inspection notices a list of SCM maintenance companies. Something to note, these are companies who have submitted a signed statement to Metro that states their company will abide by our guidelines. This list is not a recommendation or endorsement by Metro, nor is it an exclusive list of companies that offer SCM maintenance services. And something to keep in mind as a property manager, your landscaping team might not know what a bioretention is. And it's definitely not a good idea to ask them to clean out a water quality unit. So it's important to find a professional that knows what SCMs are and how they function. So after you've received the letter, property owners are given 90 days to correct the issues mentioned in the notice of inspection. And after 90 days, we'll perform a reinspection to determine if the issues have been addressed. So if a site has altered or removes their SCM and or compliance hasn't been achieved through sending a notice of inspection, we will enter enforcement proceedings. And this could potentially involve issuing administrative penalties to the property owner. The next steps could be environmental court or placing a hold on all future permitting for the property. And that's a general overview of our inspection process. I'll now pass it over to Rob and Matthew. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. So there are many different types of stormwater control measures in Davidson County, but we'll just be going over some of the maintenance requirements for the big six. This is a photo of a typical dry pond. Currently our most common SCM. You'll notice there's no woody vegetation around the structures. We recommend mowing at least a couple times per year to prevent trees from establishing. The square box is the outlet structure. This is the most important part of a dry pond and should be inspected regularly. This one has a small hole or orifice at the bottom and an overflow grate at the top. Others have a large hole or slit going to the top of the structure. Some have a standpipe with perforations. And older structures may just be a culvert. But whatever type you have, you should ensure that it's clear of trash, sediment, and debris. And of course, you'll need to stabilize any exposed soils and ensure ditches and pipes routing to the pond are free from erosion and damage. And it's important that dry ponds drain within 72 hours after a rain event. One of the best times to inspect a dry pond is a few days after a rain event to see if it's still holding water. If it is, often it's a simple fix like removing debris or sediment from around an orifice. Other times, regrading may be necessary. So you should inspect the inlets to ensure water can get to the pond and remove any obstructions, which can be tree roots like the left photo, or sediment and grass in a curb cut like in the middle photo, or sediment buildup like in the right photo. So often we see pipes disconnected from their head walls, and if it's caught early and the gap is filled and regrouted, then more costly repairs can be avoided in the future. So, and just to reiterate, you should inspect your outlet structure regularly and remove any obstructions. So when we inspect older dry ponds that haven't been maintained, typically we require all early growth trees to be removed. We may allow larger mature trees to remain if they're not within 20 feet of the inlet or outlet structures. So the photo on the left shows an overgrown dry pond, and the photo on the right shows trees removed and it seeded and strawed for stabilization. So moving on to wet ponds. So these are ideal conditions in a wet pond or retention pond, which is similar to a dry detention pond, but they're designed to retain or hold a certain water level. So these are effective in treating sediment in stormwater and can be an aesthetic feature in your subdivision or office complex. So with these, you'll want to ensure that there's no obstruction in the outlet, weir, or overflow points, that the rubber liner, if present, isn't exposed or becoming dislodged, and that forebays, if present, are clear of excess sediment and trash. And as the same for dry ponds, ensure that ditches or inlets are stable and clear of obstructions. Also, the wet pond banks should be maintained without excessive woody vegetation to prevent any leaks or damage. So here's some examples of well-maintained wet ponds with aeration. And although we don't require aeration, they can control algae and be a nice addition to your landscape. So it's important that your outlet weir, that you remove any obstructions or vegetation. The photo on the right, you can see the tree growing into the liner. You'll want to make sure that that's managed and you repair the liner so that you don't have any further issues. So also let's see, so here's the line showing a liner that's got erosion going into it. You'll want to catch that early as well. So if you do have a forebay, you want to make sure that, so these prevent sediment from entering the wet pond and should be cleaned out regularly to prevent more costly removal from the wet pond itself. The cattails are indicators that there is excessive sediment that should be removed. So bioretentions or bioretention basins, while dry ponds are historically the most common SCM in our area, bioretention basins are the most common being installed currently because they have been proven to be effective in treating stormwater runoff, very effective. However, they do require vegetation to be maintained frequently throughout the year to prevent unwanted vegetation from creeping in. So similar to weeding your garden or other landscape on your property. Washed out mulch or stone should be replaced as needed. There should be no erosion along the sides or at the inlets to the basin. The basin should drain within 24 to 48 hours after a rain event, and there should be no signs of overflows or bypassing from small storms. So is the bio portion working? Healthy, thriving vegetation is very important to the function of a bioretention. If the original vegetation has died, it will need to be replaced. And we don't require the exact same vegetation that died, but are open to similar alternatives since vegetation performs better in some conditions than others. You should look for signs of frequent bypassing or overflow. There could be a problem with the soil media or underdrains. Often the mulch layer fills with sediment and needs to be removed and replaced with new mulch instead of just mulching over, as we see here in the photo to the left. The overflow should extend above the mulch or stone layer with a few inches of freeboard. As with any SCM, you should stabilize your inlets as necessary. And forebays are designed to trap sediment and should be cleaned out regularly to prevent carryover into the bioretention where it's more costly to remove. If you see your bioretention isn't draining within 24 to 48 hours following a rain event, you may need to have the biomedia either reworked or replaced. So grass channels or grass swales are often conveyances to other SCMs. They slow the water down, settling out the sediment, and provide some infiltration. Like dry ponds, the grass should be maintained to prevent woody vegetation, but not mowed short. Ensure that there are no eroded or exposed soils, that they are free from trash, debris, and that any excess sediment is removed regularly. Water quality swales are similar to bioretentions in that they have engineered biomedia to promote infiltration and may have special plantings. You definitely shouldn't mow with commercial mowers, which could compact the soil. And the last surface SCM that I'll go over is permeable pavement or pavers. They provide an excellent treatment of the first flush of a rain event, capturing oils and sediment from a parking lot. They should be maintained regularly by sweeping, blowing, or even pulling weeds. It's best to inspect during a rain event to ensure water is infiltrating. And if you see sheet flow or ponding, you should seek professional assistance for a deep cleaning or restoration if needed. So grease from dumpsters can really clog up the pore spaces, and regular sweeping or blowing could have prevented all these weeds. So eventually a deep cleaning will probably be necessary, and here's an example of some of the equipment required. And with that, I'll pass it on to Matthew Lockhart to discuss maintenance of underground water quality units.
So water quality units are getting their own kind of category with a couple of slides due to water quality units having 4 different categories within themselves of different types of water quality units. And we'll dig into those just a little bit. So first off, water quality units, they're the second highest implemented SCM after dry ponds. Most of them have been installed in the early to late 2000s. These units are usually found underground, so with this, they are considered in confined space. You have to be trained and permitted through OSHA to enter these units. These units are made by different manufacturers with multiple models and unit sizes. They all serve the same purpose, though, of capturing sediment, trash, and other material. The maintenance requirements for each of these units is based on the manufacturers, the model, and the unit size. The devices require frequent inspections, and these devices require specialized equipment to inspect and maintain. You should contact professionals about performing inspections and must contact professionals about performing maintenance. So just some of the devices that we allow. So this slide is to point out the variety of the water quality units in Davidson County. We right now have 21 approved devices that are allowed to be installed during development of a site, with 8 more devices that we know of that have been installed on sites that are either no longer approved to be installed or have changed names under new manufacturers. All these devices still serve the same purpose of capturing runoff material from sites. All these units reach a point of where if maintenance is not performed when needed, they are designed to allow runoff to bypass treatment. Bypassing treatment of runoff should not happen unless extreme weather conditions are occurring. So our first category of water quality units are underground detention vaults. So underground detention vaults are water quality units that consist of large vaults or a series of interconnected pipes. Their main purpose is more of a water quantity rather than water quality purpose. They are designed to hold water for a certain period of time while releasing water slowly downstream of the site. Because they hold back water, some sediment could settle to the bottom of the units. These do not usually require regular maintenance, but should be inspected for sediment buildup at the access ports if present. Our next one are filters and media units. So runoff enters these units where it flows through filter or media bags. Sediment and other pollutants are captured within these filters and media bags. Manufacturers' manuals should be consulted for signs to look for when these units, filters, and media bags should be replaced and/or the filters and media bags are past their life cycle. Usually units cannot just be cleaned out when maintenance is needed. The filters and media bags must be replaced as well. Consult with the manufacturer if maintenance is needed. To do inspections on some of these units, you must enter these units. These units require professionals with proper training, permitting, and equipment to enter. Our next is the vortex sump units. So runoff enters these units where it swirls around or is slowed down by a barrier. Trash and oil will settle to the top and sediment settles to the bottom of these units. Sediment and trash should be pumped out and properly disposed of when maintenance is needed. You should consult a manufacturer's manual for the unit to ascertain the level of sediment and trash allowed before it should be cleaned out. Our next are cage and box units. So these units consist of compartments with baffles and/or screens that are used to slow down the flow of runoff. This allows it to capture trash, debris, sediment, oil, and any other pollutants. For some of these units within this category, maintenance can be determined by what is seen within the unit when it is open for inspection. We still recommend checking the sediment levels within these units if it has been determined that debris and trash buildup is low by visual inspection. Some of these units may require more frequent maintenance depending on how much trash and debris is draining to them. During fall months, these units will have more debris buildup due to the amount of leafy debris on the ground. One of the units in this category is known as the inlet skimmer box. The picture on the right of the screen, is an inlet skimmer box. These units have an oil boom that must be replaced regularly to allow the unit to function properly. So when you're doing a water quality inspection, we highly recommend again to hire a professional to inspect. Inspection consists of removing manhole covers or hatches and utilizing rods or measuring tubes, sludge judge to determine sediment levels. We ask that this be done very safely, the use of cones and maybe a partner when opening these units. Always be mindful of your surrounding traffic and never enter a unit as they are considered confined space. Maintenance will require a company with a specialized equipment that can pump/vacuum liquids and solid waste. All waste must be properly disposed of by a hauling company and shall maintain any waste manifest if requested. So finally, this slide right here is just to point out how the inspection and ultimately the maintenance of the unit is based not only on the manufacturer, but the model and the unit size of the water quality unit. The first one, the model, the downstream defender has 5 different size units with each unit size allowing different levels of sediment before clean out is needed. The same is for the unit below that, the contact Fort Century. It has 6 different unit sizes with each one allowing different sediment levels. The chart below for the contact Fort Century shows the sediment capacity for each of these size units. And just to show some pictures of the water quality units. So right here, what we have are what's called contact storm filter units. The picture on the top left is what it would look like during initial inspection. The picture on the bottom left is what it looked like after NOI was sent for maintenance. As you can see in the top left, there's trash and one of the cartridges has come loose. The picture in the middle was what the unit looked like during initial inspection. One of the units was loose. They were asked to put that back. Another inspection occurred 2 years later, and this is what it looked like. It had filled up with sediment, and the filters have been clogged with sediment. This is a vortex or sump unit. It's a contact Fort Century. So the picture on the left shows what it looked like during initial inspection. It's filled with sediment and a little bit of water. The owners cleaned it out by hiring a vac truck to pump it out. And as you can see, there's no sediment or water right now in the unit during reinspection. This right here is a cage unit. So the picture on the left shows what it looked like during initial inspection. The cage is caked with sediment, and you can't see in the picture right there, but within the middle area of the cage, there was a good amount of debris and trash buildup. The owners were sent an NOI, and they cleaned it out, and this is what it looked like during reinspection with the picture on the right. Finally, this is an inlet skimmer box. So the picture on the left shows what it looked like during initial inspection. As you can see, the box is filled with sediment. The area around the square parameter, there is, you can see kind of like a fabric that is what is left of the oil boom. It is completely deteriorated. And so during the time of inspection, this unit was non-functional. Picture on the right shows what an inlet skimmer box should look like. A properly functioning inlet skimmer box. You can see that the screen has been cleaned out, or the box area, and that there's this white boom surrounding it. That is the oil boom to treat the oil coming into the catch basin. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Jackson.
Good morning. My name is Howard Jackson. I'm the Office Support Specialist 2 here in Metro Water Services Stormwater Division. And my primary responsibility is to work on the annual reports, annual inspection and reporting documents that you will submit each year. There are a lot of people that ask, why do we have to submit this report each year? The purpose of this report is that each municipality throughout the state will take their cumulative amount of reports and combine it into an annual report, which is submitted to the state of Tennessee. And the state of Tennessee will ultimately take their cumulative information and submit an annual report to the federal government. And the entire purpose of this, as been mentioned already, is to keep our water systems clean, free of debris and contaminants. Prior to 2007, when grading permits were issued, it was not required to submit an annual report, but the regulations became a little bit stiffer in 2007. Josh Hayes mentioned this to you in his presentation. And again, it's all designed to keep our water systems clean. Every year, the process is improving. Every year, due to technology changes. It's amazing what's happening in this field, and particularly here in Davidson County, it's very important because, as most of you know, there's building going on every day, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, whether it's high-rise rental properties, mixed-use properties. So it becomes imperative that we take steps to keep your water clean and drinkable and usable. Our annual reports are now fully electronic with an Adobe fillable form, and we'll be going over that more, a little bit more in my presentation. And what that simply means, you can fill the report out online and submit it via email, but we are working on another process, which I think you will find also more helpful, but we're not quite there yet. So if you prepare your annual report online in a fillable form, you will save it, and then you will send it over on your email as an attachment. And in just a moment, I'll go over with you how we process it on this end. I'd like you to write the following down: scm.nashville.gov, scm.nashville.gov. As all updates will be posted accordingly, and any other emails or data you want to know about our storm control measures here in Davidson County. Okay. Your grading permit number. This is our way of identifying your site and your storm control measures on that site. It's essential for us to know what site the report is for. Oftentimes I will receive a report and it will have a parcel number. Theoretically, I can research that parcel number, but We have thousands of these to process, and it takes a much longer time to process your report. So if you use your grading permit number, not only on your report, but any correspondence you have that will come to Metro Water Services Stormwater Division for your stormwater control measures. Very, very important. Very important that we have those grading permit numbers to know what the site report is for. You must include all the SCMs for the grading permit on the report. Now, what that means, I'll break it down here. Say we have a grading permit number of 2008-86-24609. The first four digits are always the year that your grading permit was issued for. So the year, and then there will be a hyphen, and then there will be the rest of the number. We can put that in our database and instantly come up with a whole variety of information from the start of that project, when it was in our pre-construction department, to our permits department, to know what goes on with that particular parcel and that particular grading permit number. Now, going back to that again, you must include all the SCMs for the grading permit on the report. You may have a grading permit again of 2008-862-4609. On that grading permit number, you may have bioretentions, you may have dry ponds, you may have proprietary devices, you may have swales. They will all come under that same number if that is how it began. If you have any questions, I'm going to give you my email and my direct phone number. I'd like you to write this down, or you can print this particular page if it helps. It will be given to you again later in our presentations, but my name is howard.jackson@nashville.gov, or you can reach me at 615-862-4609, which is my direct line. Now, I'm a pretty busy guy, and if I can't answer it at that time, don't worry about it. It goes directly to my email that you called, and I will see it pop up, and I will return your call. You can count on that. You can take that to the bank that I will return your call, because that's my responsibility. So that's howard.jackson@nashville.gov, or you can call me at 615-862-4609. If you want to write a letter, correspondence, you may send it to Metro Water Services, Stormwater, 1607A, County Hospital Road, 1607A, County Hospital Road, and that's Nashville, 37218. Now, I want to advise you, please try not to send your annual reports in, because it only lengthens out the process, and it's much quicker and faster for us to go ahead and enter that information and approve it if you submit it online, as I've advised you previously. But we will. Any correspondence you will send us, it will either go to myself, it will either go to Josh Hayes, or your individual inspector. So never hesitate to write us if you feel the need. Now, the next page we're going to look at one of the most important developments that has come about in identifying these SCMs in Davidson County. And just to give you some insight, these parcel viewers are being used all around the country now, so that municipalities can identify the parcels, the stormwater control measures on those parcels, and a variety of other information. Now, I'm going to give you a link which is also on this page. If you choose not to print it, or you're in a position where you can't print it. If you can write down this link, https maps, maps.nashville.gov/parcel viewer/. Now, that's a lot. I usually just put in Nashville parcel viewer and it'll come up. So if you can't remember all that, or you don't write it down today, just put parcel viewer, Nashville, Tennessee, or parcel viewer, Davidson County, Tennessee. Don't just put Davidson County now, because they've got one in North Carolina and it'll come up. So make sure it says Davidson County, Tennessee. Okay, and that's real simple. Now, when that parcel viewer comes up, and this is one of my delights here, this is how you find out your grading permit number. Okay, and we're going to go over this a little bit by little bit here. As you can see on the display in front of you, in the box to your right, in the black section, the border across the top, that is your parcel ID number. That is the same number that the tax assessor would have. The register of deeds would have that number. And of course, that would be on your deeds. The next line would be the address for the property. In this particular case, it's 6211 Nolensville Pike. And the owner is Metro Government, what is that? Shane Elementary School. Okay. Now, well, let me go back here a little bit. I want to kind of jumped ahead here a little bit. If we go down towards the bottom here, you'll see a section that says address. Okay, you want to click on that, and I'll tell you why you want to click on that. After you go from the very top box on the right-hand side, you'll see the spyglass, you'll see the brick, you'll see 4 locations there, and then you will see the layers. That's probably the most important you want to go to. Number 4, the layers. That's right next to the camera. You click on the layers there, and after you click on the layers, okay, it will have a drop down. And when that drop down comes, you scroll down until you see stormwater, and you click on stormwater. I sometimes use streets because I want to be able to see the streets. You may want to be able to see them too. System won't break if you click on streets. So if you feel so inclined, you can do that too. Okay, once we get stormwater and the streets in there, then you go down to where that address tab is, and you click on that address tab. And then it will, okay, you'll notice here at 6211 Nolensville Pike came up. And for that, then on that same parcel, it pops up some interesting information here. You see those little gold stars? Those are indicative of your storm control measures. Now, on this particular parcel, we can readily see 2 of those stars, okay? But you'll notice up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little arrow that points to the right. If you click on that arrow, and I'll go to the next one, okay? If you click on that arrow, it will say Project ID. That Project ID is your stormwater grading permit. So in this particular case, it's 2016035729. And it says control type PT T03 bioretention. It's a bioretention site for this particular little gold colored dot there. Now, sometimes when you do all of that, it might not come up. So you juggle around on that star a little bit, and I'm going to go backwards here a little bit again. Okay. It says 1-1 of 2 here. But if you can't find it, you may want to juggle around on it, and then it may come up 1 of 3, 1 of 4. and you click that arrow again until you see that grading permit number. Okay, each one of those stars should be the grading permit number for that particular parcel. If the one on the lower left there, for instance, comes up 2008-6211, okay, that you want to create a report for that one. If the one in the upper right says 2015-1112, that will require a separate annual report. You cannot put more than one grading permit on an annual report. Must be one grading permit only per annual report. And again, you've got my number, you've got my email address. Never hesitate to contact me if I can assist you in finding that grading permit number, because that's what we're here for. Now, there's something else here, and even though it's not really that pertinent to what we're doing here this morning, I'm going to mention it anyway. If you look over here in the left-hand panel, there are areas where it says, for instance, sale instrument. That would be your deed. You can click on there and see your deed. And in some cases, when you click on that, it will also bring up your stormwater maintenance agreement, because it is part of the deed of sales. Now, that's not always the case. And when I say it's not always the case, prior to 2007, you might get 4 pages. Those 4 pages will not have a SAMA number, nor will it have the maintenance agreement attached to it. Usually, not always, but usually, in most cases, when you click on that DB, if it's a grading permit higher than 2008, you will also be able to pull up the stormwater management agreement. As you look down that side, you'll see ownership history, property history, zoning history, assessment history, permit history for your own edification. You can research this particular property. If this is your property, you can see the different permits on there. Say you've had electrical work done, or say you're doing some renovations. Those permit numbers should come up over there. But that's just an additional perk of this site. Okay, next page we're going to go to is the instrument page. You'll see it's circled there. Even though it's circled there, they're still working on that. What it's supposed to do is when you click on that, it's supposed to bring up the deed or the stormwater management agreement. It does not do that, okay? But it will do that because they're continuing to rework our entire website. So for the time being, I'm just going to pass that up and go on to the next screen here. So once you bring up your deed, you'll notice at the top here in the border, it says 1/12, 1/12. What that means is that declaration of restrictions and covenants for stormwater facilities and systems. In your upper right-hand corner, you will find what that number means, 2017-0118-0005302. And it will have the stormwater number 2016-035. That looks like a 729. Okay, so that's your maintenance agreement, and that is your stormwater agreement. Okay, so you can know that you're in the right place. This is for Lennox Grove LLC, and again, we have the instrument, which would have been the deed. Okay, so let's go on to the next page here. I know I'm taking a little bit of extra time here, but it's so important that we get this right. And I don't mind talking to you. So anytime you want to get in touch with me, you can. Now we're going to go over the form itself. The owner's annual inspection and reporting summary. Currently working on a new updated annual inspection report to be posted soon to our website. As I mentioned to you, this form is fillable online. You fill it in completely, you save it, and then you send it over as an attachment in your email. Now, we're going to the next page, and I'll go over some things which are essential when you submit these reports. Where it says important information. An annual inspection and maintenance summary report is required to be submitted by the owner or authorized personnel for all stormwater control measures. And when it says authorized personnel, that can be your actual inspector. If you have an inspector, say from the ABC company, and they're doing actual inspection, they can sign it and they can submit it if that is agreeable to you. If it's not agreeable to you, then the responsible party for the HOA or for the corporation can sign it and send it in. Now, when I say sign it and send it in, it doesn't have to be an in-person manual signature. You can actually sign these reports online as well. One form should be submitted for each grading permit. We've gone over that. Annual inspection summary report should be submitted within 30 days. Real important, within 30 days of the last inspection conducted for the year, but by no later than July 1 of the following year. So that means if you're doing inspections for 2020, it must be submitted within 30 days of the last inspection conducted for the year for that grading permit number, but no later than July 1st of the following year. So you have basically a 6-month grace period, but the sooner it works, because our inspectors can also see these reports. And if the report's all in order, they won't have to contact you. The report should include a summary of the previous year's January through December inspection and maintenance of all SCM structures for that grading permit number. Now, we'll go back and you'll recall that I said there may be several different types of SCMs under that grading permit number. As long as you see those grading permit numbers, you will submit all of the SCM structures for that grading permit number. And we'll talk about that a little further in just a second. Only one form should be submitted by each owner or authorized personnel for the structures installed under the grading permit. For example, if the grading permit for your property has a bioretention basin and pervious pavers, the report shall include information on the inspection and maintenance performed on both the bioretention basin and pavers. And we'll talk about that a little further in just a minute. Now, owners should maintain documentation of routine inspections and maintenance performed throughout the year. That is photographs, inspection notes, waste disposal tickets. Waste disposal tickets are when, say, they pull out refuse that needs to be disposed of in an EPA approved landfill. That's what that means, a waste manifest. This documentation is not required to be submitted to Metro unless otherwise requested. However, and this is very important, as it says here, it's not required to be submitted to us, but you must keep these records on file so that for any time our inspectors want to look at those records, you can present them. Not yesterday, not the day after, 2 weeks down the road. If they come out to your property today, you need to have those forms and photographs, whatever, so they can inspect them at that time to make sure you are in compliance with this. Now, if you want to submit them, that's fine. We'll take them. And what I've started doing, the annual report, submit your annual report, the interim inspections, photos and things, I will take those and I will attach them and put them on that particular database for that grade permit number. Again, it's not required. What we wanted to do, because we have thousands of these sites, we wanted to simplify the process. But it helps us too if our inspectors know what's going on with these sites. And the more you do, it's a big help, but it's not required as long as you keep those records on your site. Owners should maintain documentation of routine inspections, okay? So we've gone over that. This form should be filled out electronically. We've gone over that. Now let's go on to the next step here. This is another important area. If you look at completing the form properly, okay? Business name. Business name could be anything from the Harpeth Valley Mall, say, for instance. That's the title of that particular facility. It can be a mall facility, strip mall, whatever. If it's an individual business and where that storm control measure is, you put that name there. To your right, you will put the grading permit number. Again, those grading permit numbers will always begin with the year. Okay, so you can't get it confused with a parcel number or project number. It will begin with the year. The owner name, that would be where it says the owner name, that will be the property owner's name, or that will be the homeowners association name. And it will put it on there. It would be like Gertner and Associates Management Company, or it will be That's Land and Associates Management Company. Okay, so our inspectors and the state if necessary, but our inspectors know who the responsible party is. Now, where it says owner email, where it says owner email, that will be it can be two things here. It can be the email for the property owner, the responsible party of the HOA. What I generally look for where it says on the email, I look for the contact person. It's real important that we have the contact person. We don't want to have our inspectors running around trying to find out who they should contact for this or that. So the contact person can be John Doe, facility manager. It's important that we have that title too. John Doe, facility manager. And then you would put the email, John Doe, facility manager, email. And then below that, you would put the phone number, the direct phone number, cell number, whatever, but you must specify which one it's for. So we can have that information for our inspectors to get in touch with that person. We don't want to have them running all around, and it can be a convoluted process trying to identify the responsible party. Property address comes next, and the inspector next. If the inspector is an independent company, which is, say, for instance, on our list that we provided, you will put the name of that company. Okay, you would put the inspector's name. So in the case of, I'll give you an actual one, Ben Howard, say, for instance. Okay, you will put Ben Howard. If there is a license number, whatever, fine, you can put that. But the next thing, you can put Ben Howard. You can put the inspector's phone number and the inspector's email. Again, that's for the benefit of our inspectors so they can know who to contact, or in some cases, I will contact them. Oftentimes, because I'm responsible for these reports, I will contact them. And I'll tell you why in just a second. Then the inspector's company. If Ben Howard works for the ABC company, you want to put his company right there. Okay, let's go back over the total number of SCMs on the property. That's on the right-hand side under grading permit. Say you have one underground vault, one barrel retention, and one wet pond. Your total number of SCMs on the property is going to be 3. So you're gonna put one under underground vault, one under barrel retention, and one under a wet pond. Now, some cases you may have two dry detention ponds. What are you gonna do? Gonna put two dry detention ponds, and say you have porous pavers, check porous pavers off one, or if you have two locations, put two. That'll tell me that there are two locations of porous pavers on that property. Same thing with the wet pond. Okay, because it says total number of SCMs on property. So I want to see the total number, but as you will see in just a second, when we go through this other section here, there's a part that says all SCMs, that's at the top, all SCMs functioning at the time of the most recent inspection. It will be either yes or no. If it's a no, it will be an explanation in the summary of inspection maintenance, which is right below that. Summary of inspection maintenance. We want to know what's going on with that property. If it's a yes, we want to know what's going on with that property. But if it's a no, again, it'll be a little bit more detailed. Okay. Then on the below that, we'll go to maintenance performed, which tells us more information. You notice it says on the bottom, well, in the middle left, it says maintenance performed throughout the previous calendar year, yes or no. Again, that tells us a lot. And here you would put an explanation in that portion, which we consider the note section. So the section above that will be summary of inspection / maintenance. And the section below that will be the note section. And to the left, it will be yes or no, whether the maintenance was performed. Sometimes folks send it in and they'll have one line or they'll have nothing there. That's the most crucial part of the report we want to know about, because in our combined report, that's the information we want to give to the state. Again, unauthorized personnel signature, we've gone over that, and the date is very important. Doesn't have to be the date of the inspection. It can be the submittal date that you send it to me or send it to the inspectors. But it's very important we have a date there. Okay. One company that I deal with quite a bit, because of where the contracts are in the summary of maintenance inspection, they will have a multitude. This site was inspected in January of 2020. It was inspected of June 2020, and again in December 2020. That's great. But on the bottom right-hand corner there, we want to have the date that you submitted the report. Okay. We also have a second sheet on this report. If you feel the need, additional inspection notes, additional maintenance notes. Now, we don't want you to write a 2-volume deal here, but if you feel the need, again, it's here for you to fill in, because it helps our inspectors. Okay. And now I'll get ready to turn this over to Julie. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time this morning. I know it was a little lengthy, but it's one of the most important areas of this reporting process. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Howard, for all that great information on the annual reports. And thank you to all of our inspectors for all of their wonderful information and overview. Now, we know that we have provided you with an enormous amount of summary information here. And of course, there is an enormous amount of specific information for each of the SEMs. So to help you out with that, we will continue to have on our website, that sem.nashville.gov, the latest information. We have FAQ sheets for each of the individual SEMs, what to look for during your own inspections. And we have summaries of the various maintenance needs on there. There also is information on the parcel viewer and how exactly to use that. Just a note here, the Metro government website is undergoing some changes that will be occurring in August. Should you for some reason find that the links that you have used before or the links that we have provided you here not working, you can always just start to Google the Metro Water Services website to find this information. And of course, you can contact us directly on that. One of the things that we are doing besides what you see on here is we're making a set of summary videos that will help provide information to the people that are doing the maintenance for you. We also have some additional webinars that we'll be planning that will be specifically focused on maintenance. But one thing I do want to show you here is an example of the videos that we do have in production at this time. This is our introductory video, so this will give you a little summary of what we talked about today.
Stormwater control measures, or SCMs, reduce flooding and the amount of pollutants in water that reaches our streams. They capture sediment, car oil, excess lawn chemicals, and other pollutants that would otherwise be washed into creeks and streams. SCMs can help reduce downstream flooding by holding back, slowing down, or infiltrating water before draining to ditches and pipes that route to streams. Stormwater control measures have been required to be installed on development sites for several decades throughout Davidson County. Our regulations address how developers must adjust a building site to accommodate the rainwater that will not be able to soak into the ground when buildings and parking lots are built. You can see stormwater control measures in subdivisions, apartment complexes, churches, and commercial sites. While most SCMs are empty during dry weather, it is important to be aware of the safety hazards. They can quickly fill with water during and after rainstorms, and SCMs can have underground pipes that should only be entered by OSHA-trained personnel. There are over 6,000 SCMs within the county, with more being installed every day. The current property owner is legally responsible for inspecting and maintaining the stormwater control measures on their property. Proper maintenance of SCMs not only prevents pollution from reaching neighborhood creeks and streams, it is also a legal requirement. Property owners of sites that were developed after 2007 are required to file an annual SCM maintenance report with Metro Water Services. All property owners are responsible for inspecting and maintaining SCMs on their property. A maintenance and inspection document for your SCM is included with your property deed. These documents are available through the Metro Nashville Register of Deeds. While sites developed before 2008 are not required to submit annual inspection reports, Metro does encourage and will accept reports from these properties. Owner-submitted annual inspection reports shall include all of the SCMs listed for the property under the grading permit number that it was developed under. Reports should be submitted as soon as possible after the last inspection for the year, but no later by July 1st of the following year. For questions on annual reporting requirements, email mws.scm@nashville.gov. Metro Water Service inspects stormwater control measures to ensure they are properly maintained by the property owner and functioning properly. Annual SCM maintenance by the property owner will avoid unnecessary expenses.
All right, so that gives you an example of the type of information we'll be providing. Coming up in this series of videos will be information about each of the big six and how to inspect them. And I'll turn this back over to Josh Hayes to give you some final words.
Okay, thank you everyone for your presentations. Thank you all for joining us today. This last slide has all of our contact information. Everybody that's involved with the SCM program spoke today, and this is all their contact information. Emails are the best way to reach us. You could also call our office number, and as Howard said, we'll leave a message with our email, so we'll get back to you. But basically, it shows you in this slide what each person's focus is. Starting with Howard, he's obviously over the annual report submittals. So he would be the one to contact on that. Liz Steinstraw, she's right now focused on our Metro-owned facilities. We have over 300 Metro-owned SCMs that we have to inspect every year, coordinate with. She's also our enforcement coordinator. So when sites have issues that our inspectors can't work through and we have to go to enforcement, Liz is the one that pursues that. And then we got Jessica, and her original area was west of I-65, but she also took over the downtown area. So if there's a question about an issue west of 65 or in the downtown loop, you could start with Jessica on that. Then you got Matthew Lockhart, who his focused area is mostly in the southeast portion of the county. And then Rob would be in the kind of the northeast portion of the county around Hermitage type area. And I just noticed that I have a typo in Rob's email. It's actually robert.topowski@nashville.gov. So with that said, there's a lot of information. As we mentioned, this is just an overview. We could present for hours because each structure, as you saw with Matthew and Rob's presentation, has a lot of nuances involved. And I know you guys are going to have questions, probably a lot of questions relating to specific sites. So when you do have questions, if you have general questions based on today's presentation, please submit those to the mws.scm@nashville.gov email address. This is the same email address that you submit your annual reports to. If you can submit those by the end of the day tomorrow, I will put together a document of all the questions that we might have gotten and answers and send them to everybody that attended this workshop. If you have a site-specific question, your best chance is to go with one of the inspectors that is in the areas that I mentioned. So with that said, I'm going to end the meeting. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining today. Thank you.